Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo of Mish Mash. This one being broadcast live June 9th, 2021. I meant to mention this last show, June, halfway through the year. It is a fantastic time to check in with, your photo goals for the year. So I just thought we should do that this video. When I say I just thought that, I mean, right now, I just thought that. We've got lots more to talk about in this show, though. We should talk about the new Lightroom updates. I'm really excited. There is now, as I'm gesturing to my Lightroom on my M1 Mac, I now have a native client for the M1s, and that's exciting. How much speed improvements am I seeing? Noticeable. So we're going to talk about that. Plus, there's some speed improvements for people that are using Windows and Lightroom on the old style Intel Macs. We got to review your photos and lots more to chit chat about. I'm so excited. This is new. This is me with two other co-hosts that I've had but never had on at the same moment in time before. And for some reason, they conspired against me to look so sunshiny and wonderful. And here I am in gray. I think maybe we're representing our local weather. I'm not sure, but let's start with Krystal. Krystal, so glad to see you again. Welcome back to the show.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. And Krystal, we were just chatting before we went live. I'm really excited. Since you've last been on the show, you're now, when you're on the show, I'd say you're an official YouTuber because you're on YouTube, but you have your own YouTube video up now. The lighting alone is fantastic and fun to watch for that. But for anybody who's photographing with Canon and thinking about a 50 millimeter lens, you go through a really nice kind of dissection of both of those, the Canon RF 51.2 and the Sigma 51.4. And not only do we get to see more of your beautiful children in the video, but of course we get to see hands-on with both of those lenses. So anybody who's thinking about that, I've linked that video right down below this one. Go give it a watch. I won't ask you, I asked you behind the scenes to kind of tell me which one you were leaning to. I don't want to spoil that. Folks should go watch the video. I would say, I think you can't really go wrong with either lens. Is that
right? Yeah, I didn't find too much of a difference in the lenses, but just for personally, I just feel like I'm leaning more towards I'll just say it. I'm leaning more towards the native lens than Sigma. But you can't, like you said, you can't go wrong with either lenses. They both perform very well.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. We might talk a little bit more about that, but let me introduce Tanya, who has joined us today and is also, of course, wearing yellow. You guys, you didn't talk beforehand, did you?
We didn't. Good. Great minds.
Yellow shirt. So
I love it. I just wish I was a little bit more bright. I've got green underneath, but it's not the same as yellow. Tanya, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I did get to photograph the cicadas. I had to drive 2 hours to find them, but I was very thrilled about that.
Oh, nice.
That's right. Tanya, of course, the easiest way to find Tanya is her Instagram, TanyaWilhelm.artist right there. And from there, you can get to your macro work. I'll be honest, I wasn't paying attention. I saw those pictures on Facebook, but have you posted to Instagram your cicada pictures?
I did post some of them. I still have more to edit. And I brought some home. So I'm not finished with them.
Okay.
But yeah, they'll probably make it into some portrait work here soon.
Nice. Into portrait work. Interesting. All right. And if you're wondering how Tanya's gonna work that into portrait work, well, you should go check out the link to her Instagram, and from there I think you'll get an idea of the kind of fun and very creative portrait work you do, Tanya, and how cicadas might just work into that. Steve and David both were available to the show. I just want to make that clear. You guys were not second run. I said, I want to do a show that, with both Tanya and Krystal at the same time. Why not? If I can handle Steve and David at the same time, I can handle Tanya and Krystal at the same time, I think. But I heard from Steve today. He and I are headed out on a workshop to Joshua Tree on Saturday. And not only is he very excited for the workshop, but he is very excited to leave behind Cicada Land for a period of time. Because
I went to my aunt's house in Harrisburg, and they are getting louder and louder there. She'll call me and I can sometimes not hear her very well. So
oh wow,
it is incredible. I mean, and we just I don't know where they are in my area. It was only a 2-hour difference, but I haven't seen any here.
Still none have showed up.
No.
No. Yeah. And for those who don't know, Tanya, you're in the kind of eastern Pennsylvania region.
Yeah.
And so 2 hours is what you had to drive. I wonder if there's any closer. Let's get gross for a second. The ones you brought home, are you keeping alive, or have they passed on and you're keeping preserved? How are you going to work with these?
They're currently preserved. I mean, I didn't kill them, but
right. They're not. They don't live too long. I had them
outside in a little container with air, and I went out one evening and I was like, oh, okay, so they're dead. But then I pinned them so their wings would be open, because I think it's really fascinating to be able to see. So a lot of times they have their wings closed when they're resting. So most of my images, their wings are closed. So I wanted to do some with their wings open, and it'll be fun.
Sure, yeah. And I said they don't live too long. I should amend that to say after they come above ground, they don't live too long, because of these, of course, are just the 17-year cicadas. Krystal, you're still cicada free down there in the Georgia area?
Yeah, I haven't really paid attention, but I think I am. I haven't really seen. Yeah,
I think you know.
Yeah.
I think you would know. Definitely. It would be something that would come up. Yeah. Okay. Krystal, back to you for a second, because you produced that video about the 50. You are a Canon shooter.
Mm-hmm.
You said you're going to follow up on that video. What are some other videos that you have planned for your channel?
So I'm really just trying to make the channel be more personable, like not really come at you with it from the tech side, just more like a personal, experience side. Because I don't want people to come at me with this isn't correct. I want to just keep it, really mellow, really chill. But I do love renting lenses. So I figure, why not just make videos about the lenses that I rent and then share my experience with those. So I thought that may be interesting.
Yeah, nice. And you asked at the end for suggestions. One of the things you gave a little behind the scenes of you working with your daughter there at the end. I'd love to see a little bit more of that for me personally, because that kind of directing and talking about what you're looking for as you photograph your children. And gosh, she's so cooperative.
She is.
I'm so impressed at that age.
Yeah. She, I try not to I don't photograph her often anymore, as much as I did when she was little. So I think she's more tolerable now, because I'll photograph her, then it'd be maybe a week, and then I'll photograph her maybe again. So that probably helps.
Cool. Good. Yeah. Tanya, you do a lot of portrait photographer. You work with kids fairly often. What are some? How do you work with a non-cooperative child?
I think that depends on the age.
Good
when they're between 1 and 4, I use my 70 to 200 and consider that the chasing lens. So I'm just hopeful that they will play and be themselves, and then I can capture that. If they're really not interested in being posed in any way or sitting still, I just think that if you're trying to fight with a kid, you're never getting the images. So, but sometimes it's just kind of finding the connecting point. I photographed some preschoolers, and it's finding out what pet do they have at home, what TV show are they loving, and then when they start to talk about that, they light up. And but I also think it's easier to photograph other people's kids than my own, depending on their age. I remember, I see you photographing your kids all the time, and I just remember when they were younger, I would try to photograph my kids pretty regularly, and we always all left crying, mostly me. So he's I can photograph anybody else's kids, but mine was this tragedy. So that's hard.
Yeah. I from my own experience with my own children, I would say that there are times where it is very difficult to photograph your own children, because there could be a level of "I'm done with you, Dad," and then you're out of luck. I mean, then you break out, as Kelly Mitchell said in chat, chocolate. So I have, yes, at weddings, when I used to photograph weddings, it wasn't a bad idea to have a little bit of candy in your camera bag too, because if there was a child acting up, check in with the parent. Hey, can we, little candy? Hey, here's a little candy. Act right for like 5 more minutes, please, kid. And then we'll all be done.
Right.
I used to always think that if I could strap a GoPro to my back and make a YouTube video of what parents do to make their children smile for me, that would be very fun.
Yeah.
There
The
are all
bright
kinds of weird things going on behind me, and parents are nervous that their kids are not performing well.
Yeah. And that actually, it's a good point. And that's one of the things I've seen happen is parents can be so nervous and worrying so much about this, the kid catches onto that energy and gets a little uptight as well. And so I think it's nice to tell parents, look, I mean, you can't always do this, but look, relax. We'll get something out of this. Like you said, you start engaging with them and talking to them. And, don't worry, something good will happen.
I actually find that I come across that more with newborn clients, which is funny because you can't expect performance out of the newborn. But I think that parents are very worried that the baby's going to cry and they can't fix that. And I just always tell clients, like, I have patience of steel. And also, I am very calm with babies. I'm very comfortable with them. And I do think, like, they get that feeling from my energy and relax because I'm relaxed. So sometimes it is actually harder to calm down the parents than the baby. And a lot of times they'll say, like, oh, I can't believe you got the baby to calm down or sleep, or will you come home with us? And it's really just because I'm not trying to get a baby to sleep. I'm just trying to make them comfortable. And when I'm comfortable, I think they kind of just assume that emotional posture as well. So
That's good.
Yeah. Tanya, you said you like with the younger children outside, or if you have the room, the 70 to 200, to try to let them be them and be back a little bit. Krystal, you were just working on the 50. You have older children. Let's say tomorrow somebody hands you the Canon 50 and says, "Great, what's your next lens you're looking for, Krystal?"
So I have an 85, which is like a good, long lens for me, like my comfortable zone. If I would go longer, I'd probably say I really like the 105 or the 135, but I don't want lenses that are so close together. But I just love lenses, so give me all the lenses, really.
It's been a long time since I shot with the 135, but that focal length, if you have the room for it, is fantastic. Yeah. Good. I've neglected the chat room for a few minutes, so let me take a moment to say hello to the chat room. Thank you so much for joining us today, especially live if you're able to watch us live. As I said, one of the topics on the show today is the Lightroom update. One of our biggest complaints and one of the most frequent bullet points on the update form from the guys at Adobe and Lightroom is performance improvements. I would love to know if chat room, if you've upgraded to Lightroom so far, have you seen any improvements? The big ones for the kind of across the board are supposed to be in the metadata library section. It's not supposed to take quite as long to load all of your photos and then allow you to kind of search through them. So we'll take a quick look at that and talk a little bit more about it. But yes, you can let us know. And as always, this is a great chance and a great show to ask questions. We have two fantastic family portrait photographers. We've got Canon shooter, a Nikon shooter. I'm a Sony shooter. So if you've got questions about gear, we probably have some answers for you. So you can just put a Q in front of it and put that question into chat. Most likely we'll answer it as we're going along. But if we don't, then we'll answer it at the end of the show, our little Q&A section. And Tanya, I'm going to pass this question from Kevin off to you. Because you've done some PPA, and this year he wants to know if he should seal his PPA images. The deadline is August 17th, he thinks.
So I was actually just texting in the chat there while you were...
Oh, yeah. I see that.
I'm not sure if maybe he means something different in his question than he said. So if he entered in district and had a merit, then that will show, if I'm correct, I've not done district level before because COVID ruined that last year. But from what I understand, it's going to show as sealed, and then unless you open or break that seal, it will automatically retain its merit if you enter international competition. I think that you mean registering for the international competition and entering. Maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I might need you to be more specific about that question. But if you had an image sealed, you don't have to do anything except for not break that seal, unless you want to risk and try to make an improvement on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
And the reason you might want to risk breaking the seal, if it merited at districts, you could break the seal, make improvements to it so that it possibly can go lone at international. Is that the goal?
Correct. And I believe they're changing that. They're not going to call it a lone image anymore. They're going to call it an image of excellence.
Aha.
Mm-hmm. They like to have their own vocabulary. So
got it. Okay. All right.
Kevin, if I didn't answer that, just retype it and I'll try to get to it in the comments.
Looks like he's happy. Before we move on to the editing and review of the Lightroom images you all submitted, if you want to submit images and you're not a PEN member, you should consider joining photorec.tv/PEN is where you can find out more about that. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But I wanted to just kind of give a quick shout out. Tamron is lending me this lens, the 150-500, and all of us on screen right now are mirrorless photographers as well with Canon and Nikon. And I'll say that like with the Canon 50mm versus the Sigma 50mm, you really can't go wrong. I feel very similar about the cameras these days. I mean, the Canon, the Nikon, and the Sony mirrorless are all very, very good. You really can't go wrong. Maybe one might not be as well suited for you as another. But I'll say one of the strengths that I think Sony has right now is the number of good third-party lenses. I'm not positive this is a great third-party lens because I haven't reviewed it yet. I haven't put it up against the 100-400, but I love the price. The build quality feels excellent, and it's got this feature that I haven't seen in quite a while in a lens. It's a little clutch lock. Do you see that little white line? It's now locked at that position, and so I can zoom a little bit, and then just with a little slide, most longer lenses have some kind of locking mechanism that will allow it to keep it from creeping or, kind of getting, extending as you're carrying it down the street. And this little lock does that. And most have a little switch. And I always find it kind of a pain to find the switch, but just the whole little zoom ring changes. And I think that's very nice. The other nice touch I like is that the foot is Arca Swiss compatible. So you don't need to put a tripod plate on here if you have an Arca Swiss style tripod head. It's the little things that make me happy. And then there's the price. The price seems very good when you compare it against the Canon 100, the Sony 100-400. So that's going with me in about 2 weeks. No, I'm sorry. In a week and a half, I leave for Alaska and the Alaska brown bears photography trip that I'm very excited about. This lens is coming along with me, and that'll be a great actual testing ground to see how well it does, how fast focus is, how sharp it is, how does it compare against the 100-400. So
nice.
Yeah, that's exciting. All right, let's dive into our Lightroom pictures. We've got a handful of beautiful pictures today, and I'm going to put those on the screen there. And again, this is the part of the show where if you're a PEN member, you get to regularly submit images for this feedback and tips and tricks through Lightroom and sometimes Photoshop of how we would make them better. I think it's just a fantastic opportunity to see how others would edit your photos and what they would suggest and the kind of feedback that you can take into the field with you the next time you're out shooting. If you're watching and you're not a PEN member, again, photorec.tv/PEN is a great way to learn about all of that we offer, because this is just a tiny little piece of the entire package that you get when you subscribe. So let's jump right in with Eric Anderson's Stakey Bay Supermoon.
That's really,
yeah. What were you gonna say, Krystal? Go ahead.
that's just really it's really. I love the color. It's just, I don't know. I love the mood. So natural looking. I mean,
That's exactly what I was going to say. The colors are lovely. This gradient of the blue into the soft pinks is very, very nice. And we have a little taste of that down in the water as well.
Yeah, I don't even see, it's always so hard looking at an image through the screens like this, but I don't really see any banding, which is nice with that kind of gradient. And I can't tell if there's grain or not, but it doesn't look like it through this. So
there's just a little bit, but nothing that really bothers me. And the detail and exposure of the moon too are very nice. Couple little things that I'm seeing is we have just a shadow of a wave or a wake here that's just a little bit darker and only extends across part of the frame. I think we have such a close to very minimalistic shot that I would go ahead and take that out. I don't think I would crop it out because now we're getting in a little tighter on the dock than I would like. Oh, you did some cropping already, Eric, but I think I like where you decided to crop it to. I would just get rid of that last band there. And then come back now. There we go. There's just
fast upgraded Lightroom.
Yeah, this is the faster upgraded Lightroom. Now, in its defense, it is running on my older iMac, but we have something in the water, some little, I don't know, artifact or something there that is catching my eye. It's the only one that I would take it out, but otherwise, I think this is nice.
The other change that I would make to this is that I think I would try to change the color of that orange building to something on the cool side of the color wheel, because this is just such a nice pastel palette, and then we just have that, like, I just keep getting pulled back into the orange. So if we could change the color of that, I just think the whole thing would feel so much more uniform.
Yep. So you're talking even more than just messing with the hue and saturation, as we could do here. We could, of course, shift that color in one direction or another, but really shift it to the opposite side of the color wheel.
Yeah, it might be nice if you could go like a blue or a neutral, like some of the other buildings.
Yep, I think that's a great suggestion. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Eric. Very lovely. Let's move on. We got Steve Pressman I think he returned to Yellowstone recently. So late winter Yellowstone area shot is what I'm guessing this is.
Beautiful. It looks a little slanted to me, like in the middle, like it should be come down to the right.
Yep. And so sometimes I feel like it can be hard to tell horizon wise. So then I start looking at the trees, and yes, some trees lean, but you get kind of a sense of the average. And yes, Krystal, I think you're right. It was leaning. And I'm looking at the average kind of upright of the trees. We end up somewhere around there. I'm going to do a little bit more of a panoramic looking crop, the 16:9, and come in a little bit. Because I don't know if we need, I like that we have the hill and its reflection down here. I like a bit of this curve leading us, but I don't think we need quite as much as there is. What do you all think about this little tree on this near shore that's peeking in on the side? Is that a nice anchor point for you, or is that a distraction?
I didn't notice it at first until you pointed it out, but I feel like I see where he was going with that. Like he was trying to like add a little foreground framing, but I could take it or leave it. Didn't really, yeah.
I don't mind it so much on the bottom, but I don't love the tree coming into the sky at the top.
Yeah.
I feel like that one pulls me out, yeah. But maybe not as much the bottom. And if you were going to work on the bottom, I don't think that's a cropping situation. That would mean cloning. And I don't know how Steve feels about doing that.
Oh, I think you do. I think you do know how Steve feels about that. Steve's not a big fan of the...
I'm going to bring him over to the Photoshop dark side eventually.
Yeah. Keep working on them. I think you can get them there eventually, but it's going to take some work. It might take a retirement too. And he's a busy guy. Yeah.
But I really don't. I don't notice the ones on the bottom as much as I just feel like the one on the top pulls me away. So maybe if we just brought it in there.
Yeah, let's just come in a little bit further. Just a little bit there. Yeah.
I also just feel like we need a little like contrast in those trees.
Yes. I feel this feels very midday. We kind of have that harsher, little bit of a blue light. So adding a little bit of contrast is going to be a nice suggestion. I also wonder, I'm curious if I warm it up a little bit, just a little, so that we still have our nice blue sky and our nice blue reflection, but bringing that temp up takes some of the blue out of the landscape itself. And I think brings it into a little bit more of a realm of nice. So now I'm just going to kind of do some quick basic edits of shadows down. Whites look like they're pretty close to popping, so I'm going to bring them down, and blacks down a little bit. Texture and clarity up, and maybe that was a little too much. We're working on a J. Oh no, we are working on a raw. So that was straight out of his camera. It seemed the way. I don't like quite how those trees are responding to the texture and clarity. They're getting a little bit more crispy than I'd like, but I think that's pretty nice. I'm actually going to bring highlights down. This brighter snow back here. Right. Brush on. Yeah. Any other suggestions?
Looks good.
Yeah. All right.
I feel like
Thanks,
if Steve were here, he would have made it black and white.
Do we want to look real quick? Let's look real quick, because I think
I'll just represent for him.
Always good. So as soon as I go black and white, I'm going to really increase that contrast. I could probably bring the blacks down a bit more to really start that difference, to really showcase the difference between the trees and those whiter trunks.
This kind of has a cool abstract feel in black and white.
I think you can go either way. Nice, good representing. All right, we're going to move on. We've got Steve Partridge has this shot.
Ooh, I really like the light here, especially in the dress.
Yes, the light coming through the dress, through the hair, just sun actually just kind of kissing the shoulder here. And some really nice fall off. Shot at f2.8, so we don't really have a starburst or sunburst, but we have this nice kind of soft horizon in the distance.
Yeah. It just seems like there's a color cast over the whole photo. Like the green is like taking over. I don't know.
Yeah, see that. So I'm going to bring up the tint a little bit. And then I might. Well, Krystal, how would you deal with that?
Usually when there's a color cast like this, I play around with the yellows and the greens and the HSL, and I try to balance those out. Or I'll even go to the calibration, and I use that panel quite a bit to correct. So if you use the calibration, I would bring that up a little bit.
Yeah.
And it makes it the green. There's a few things I would do, but we don't have.
I'm so glad you mentioned the calibration panel. We don't talk about it too often. Somebody wrote me just a little while ago, and the solution that I had for them was to come down into the calibration panel and work. This can be incredibly powerful with just a little bit of movement. So if you are struggling with color cast or just feeling like the color isn't quite right, you might find the color calibration is the fastest way to get to where you want to go. So I think I just shifted that a little bit. You could also bring the saturation down a touch if you felt like that was also issue. And the color grading might also help here some, but because it's a newer panel, I still don't have. It isn't a quick go-to for me. It's a little bit more of an afterthought. But
I have been using the color grading panel quite often which is very unusual for me. But I find sometimes even just pulling that blending slider, once I've done all of my work in Photoshop, that just tightens it up. I've been really happy with it.
Yeah. In this shot, I'm curious. I'd love. I feel like the sky lost a little bit of its kind of warmth in our calibration panel, and so I can come into the highlight section, kind of warm the brights up a little bit more, and then in the shadows, we could try to come down into the cooler tones, so you can to see if we can kind of get also. Oops. A little bit of that less color cast there. No, I don't like that. Let's be subtle with that as well. All right. What else?
Also, that her dress is like, I think it's supposed to be white. Usually what I do when that happens is I'll go into the purple on HSL and I'll pull the saturation down in the purple, and that usually helps with the whites that are leaning more towards bluish, purplish.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Good call. Yep. Yep. We can even go into the luminance, find the purple, and push it this direction as well, which should further wash out the color that's in there. Yeah, and there might be a little magenta as well. Yeah. Nice. I am. It's interesting. It has a little bit of a mystery to it, this picture, because she's looking away. I can't quite figure out her age, and whether she's dreaming about heading off to high school or whether she's, dreaming about owning a farm or what. So there's a little bit of a mystery to it there, and I think I like that. Yeah, so it's good. Anything else?
No, I think this has great quality of light, and that's just something that people forget to capture sometimes in a portrait. So
Yeah, nice. All right, thanks, Steve. Teresa has this composite, which honestly I don't think I would have known was a composite at first glance, but then I saw she posted in pen. I know, Tanya, you gave her some great feedback, and I think she's made some changes based on that. And this is from Yosemite. I think that both the star and the landscape picture were taken very near each other and at a very similar time. Oh, no, actually, she said the landscape was blue hour, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So she took this during a brighter period of the day, or maybe just after sunset. This is a really nice way to get good detail in your landscape. And then later you take a nice shot of the stars. You can, of course, leave your camera in the exact same place so that you are just taking two different pictures at different times, but the same composition and the sandwiching together, or you can move it around. It's always up to you. I think this is lovely. And as I said, I would not think it was a composite necessarily. The only thing that I'm noticing is when we get into the kind of darker regions of the stars, we have just this little bit of banding right along the tree line.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is Teresa in our chat? She often is. But I'd be curious to know is, how did you composite these, Teresa? Did you use the sky replacement? Because that might have introduced that. Or if you didn't use that, you might try. Because oftentimes I find that sky replacement does a very, very good job of blending at that edge.
She said she started all over again, and we'll post that later.
Okay. All right. That's really, I think this is a lovely shot. I think you've done a nice job. One of the more difficult parts of a composite like this is getting that brighter landscape shot to look like it was captured under the stars. And you did editing here that I feel like makes this feel dark and starlit with just a camera that was able to capture a lot of that nice detail and that color. You just really start to lose all of this color after the sun goes down because there's just not light for it.
I do wonder, though, if the foreground is a little too warm for that sky.
Let's throw a graduated filter over it real quick from the bottom up, and let's cool it down more and see how we feel. Does that feel a little bit more realistic?
I personally like it. I just feel like we have such a blue cast from the sky that will help to keep you from noticing that it's a composite.
Yep.
And actually, I think she had a car in the tunnel in the original one.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was really trying to figure out if I wanted to tell her that I thought the headlights were distracting. I kind of think it told a nice story. I might leave that, but it's totally your call. I think it ends up being two different stories with the photo if you leave the car lights in there. And they do draw your eye away, but it just kind of keeps the eye moving through the piece. And that leading line from the stone wall just pulls you into it so nicely that I think I would keep them.
I'd like to see them. I would like to see them. So
Yeah.
Roger's got a good tip for the halo banding. That can be removed easily in Photoshop using the clone brush with the mode set to darken.
Yeah.
Yes, great tip. And it's really quite noticeable in a couple places there, Teresa. Down here where it's brighter, I don't really notice it. But as it gets dark, that is something you want to work on. Neat shot. Beautiful starry sky. And I love the landscape down below as well. Nice. Thanks. Roger Hunt. Speaking of Roger, he jokingly posted earlier this week that he's given up on birds and he's switching all of his energy to photographing damselflies. Although you guys in England call them something adorable. I can't remember what it was, but we call them damselflies or dragonflies usually.
Well, they're not. They're different from dragonflies. I'm just gonna say.
What's that?
Damselflies hold their wings back and together when they're resting, and a dragonfly holds their wings spread out. So they are actually two totally different things.
Good point. Good point. Thank you. Yeah. Good. All right. I'm glad we could get a little entomology lesson in here too.
I found out that is what Roger went to school for.
Oh.
I know. I was so thrilled. So now I'm going to have to ask him all these questions about every bug that I photograph.
Great. That's great. All right. This is one of those kind of fun, little bit of a classic macro shot where I've got one of these with a lizard from ages ago that it's not that good a picture when I look at it now, but it was one of those early pictures that I captured that I was just so happy that I captured it because I think it's just such a neat experience where you have a little bit of the creature peeking over and then you have a bigger view of its body through the shadow. Gosh, I think this is lovely. This is a lovely shot. The only thing that I see is we have a little bit of I feel like a brightness and chromatic aberration both on the eyes and even here on I'm going to use the technical term, the mustache of the damselfly. That's real. That's the only thing that pulls me away from this image a little bit. Any other thoughts?
That was actually the first thing that I noticed as far as what I would fix, but otherwise this is a great image. Gives it a lot of personality, and I think bugs need that.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, the way he's holding on to this little leaf right here, and the way this other little leg just kind of is dangling over the side.
He's just chilling. Just chilling.
Yeah. Totally. It's great. Very nice shot, Roger. Thanks. And Kevin Walk was out last night. I know because he was messaging me on Instagram and shared and captured this of the Golden Gate Bridge. Not too long after sunset, I would guess. First off, I think the crop works really well here. I'll say that. What else do we want to say?
I just feel like the foreground, it's just like this on the left side. I don't know. I know he was trying to like frame it a certain way, but it's just too dark, or it's just too much of it. Maybe if he would have like maybe moved over a little to the right, just a tad to get. I don't know.
Yeah, I have photographed from in this area, but I don't remember exactly what your options are for getting all of that. You might have just suggested that he take one more step and fallen off
You
a
fall off
cliff.
a cliff.
But I do agree that it's a larger and very dark, heavy area that was kind of taking up some of the frame there. So I cropped in a little bit, which I think can help. But thinking about positioning this repositioning could be good as well. What do you think, Tanya?
If I think I like this in color, but I think I want to see this one in black and white too.
All right, let's try it. I'll say that it's timeless.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about the red and blues for me that just I felt like I was distracted by the color.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had competing color. We had the very red lights for the ships on the side of the bridge. We had kind of the soft glow in the sky. We had this different city lights in the background. Then, of course, Golden Gate itself, very nicely lit up. And as soon as we go to black and white, I feel like there's a cleanliness to this image that just improves it. And it could just be my imagination, but I feel like I now see more of the detail to the bridge itself, where you can actually kind of see these neat ridges that are on those taller pylons or whatever you call those.
Generally speaking, I feel like I am a champion for color images, but I really do like this one in black and white better.
Yep. I think that looks very good. Nice. All right. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for submitting. We're going to come back to this view right here because we're just going to stay in Lightroom for a moment, or stay with screen sharing. And I'm going to pop up, not that page, but this page right here, talk a little bit about the new features in Lightroom. And one of them is that instantly enhance image quality using the new AI-powered super resolution. So we saw this come to Photoshop, I don't know, just a couple months ago. It wasn't too long. What it means now is, I'll do this with Kevin's picture. In Lightroom, you can come down to the Enhance link, and this has been here for a while. But now, instead of just raw details, which was applicable only to those types of files before, really, you have the super resolution. It doubles the size of the resolution. Now, Tanya or Krystal, it's been in Photoshop for a while. Have either of you made use of it while it was in Photoshop?
I actually used it a couple weeks ago for a photo of my dad, and I had to crop it, and then it was so small, but I wanted to print it really quickly, and so I cropped it, and then I used the enhance so I could print a decent size. It was like an 8x10 of the photo, so it worked fairly well. So
okay, better than nothing, I guess, or better than having to be printed. Okay, so that's good to know, and that I think is kind of a perfect application for this. Maybe working with older photos that you've got scanned in, or just older photos that were smaller megapixels. This would be a way to double that. Or Tanya, have you used it at all?
I haven't, but I'm just kind of about to explore some of this. I downloaded the Topaz bundle that was on sale at the beginning of the month, and I really haven't used those much before. I think I did a free trial of one of them one time. But I was asked to photograph a hummingbird in a nest for one of my clients yesterday, and my longest lens is a 70-200, which was not enough reach. I'm shooting from like a 2-story bathroom window, like 20 feet into a tree.
And hummingbird nests are about as small as you can get.
Yeah, so I actually am borrowing a 80-400. I'm going to go back and try again. But I have a decent shot. I have to crop so far in. And I'm going to definitely try a few of these things with that to see how close I can get the shot that I took with my 70-200. So it'll be an interesting way to kind of test some of these products for me, using them for
I'd be really interested to hear your results. I've played around with it a little bit. I used it in Photoshop. I made a larger print of an image from Africa that I had cropped in pretty tightly, and I have not gotten that printed yet, so I don't know the exact results, but it looks great. And I zoomed in to do a lot of fine detail work in Photoshop, and there is a lot of detail there. So it's pretty impressive. Just to finish up here, with that check, you just hit the enhance button. It tells you that it's going to take about 10 seconds. Kevin, I hope you don't mind us using your image as an example. But what it does is it's going to create a second image from this first one that is double the resolution in both directions. So you're actually kind of quadrupling. So let me pull this back up so we can see a little bit bigger. We now have the little stack icon. And if I click that, we can see that there's two of them. There is the PSD that Kevin sent in that we reviewed, and then there's the enhanced version. And if I get my information up, the enhanced version is a 10,000 by 4,300 pixel image. And of course, the originally sent in was just 5,000 by 2,100. Let's put these real quick side by side, the C key to compare. Let's get in here and see. Yeah, and let's bring this into 200%, right? That should be the same size. So on the right at 100% is the enhanced. On the left at 200% is the PSD. Looks
it
go
looks
ahead.
a little sharper, and I'm seeing it's screen to screen, so
That's right. You're seeing in this over YouTube compression. So I am seeing additional detail in here and a little bit of additional noise as well. So that is something to keep in mind, that it's when you make an image bigger, you're going to notice that noise and flaws more easily. But I'm impressed. And the fact that it's built into Lightroom now so easily, I think I will be using this more often.
Right.
I don't know if I won't be using this on most images, but it's nice to have it in your back pocket when you like you said, Tanya, you might be shooting a hummingbird nest with not the longest lens. So pretty interesting. I'd love, again, chat room, or if you're watching this not live, leave a comment down below. Have you tried it? What do you think? I think the real test is going to be when you try to print a little bit more often and see how that works out. We also have a tether live view for Nikon. Tanya, as a Nikon shooter, have you ever used the tethering in Lightroom or any other program?
So I just used it for the first time like 2 weeks ago, and I loved it. And I probably won't ever try shooting self-portraits without tethering again. It made things so much easier for me. And I would also like to incorporate it with some of my client work, depending on, like for professional headshots, I would like to use it for things like that, where they can kind of know and feel confident before they even leave.
Yeah, yeah, it's very nice to be able to show on that big screen, and you can even, as it comes in, you can even have a preset do a little bit of editing as it comes in, so a little bit of contrast and clarity is applied automatically if you wanted to. And tethering in Lightroom has typically been not always the most reliable. I don't know, Krystal, have you ever used it in any?
I used it once. I think it was like a couple years ago. That was my only time using it. It wasn't too bad, actually. It was for a class, so I had other people watching online, and so I enjoyed working with it.
Nice. Yeah, good. Yeah, and so I think this is it's worked best with Canon over the last couple of years, but Nikon has been notoriously not as good. So it's nice to see some focus on really improving that and having it be something that you can rely on, which is nice. The other enhancements to talk about, I'll get to the silicon in a second, is the premium presets now. I haven't looked at these at all, but it's kind of funny. When I saw premium, I thought, oh, Adobe wants us to sell their own Lightroom presets. No, they just mean they're including what they consider to be very high quality presets are now automatically being included in Lightroom. Let's use Steve Partridge's picture real quick as an example. And if we get into the develop module, we should see those right here. Portraits, deep skin, medium skin, light skin, cinematic, futuristic. And then underneath each of these, we have Lots more options. And of course, you can see that it does a quick preview in the top left corner as I mouse over these. Tanya, how often do you use presets you've purchased?
In Lightroom?
Yes. Well, you're not a huge Lightroom user, right? Are you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Because I run actions often, which are essentially presets for Photoshop. Yeah. But I mean, this doesn't show up as a separate layer, right? You're actually just altering that image.
That's correct. The way presets work in Lightroom is you basically click this and it's going to move many of these sliders to these different locations and use all of the different panels to make adjustments to it. Look, you can see all of the different color adjustments that have just happened here. By the way, I think this is terrible. Sorry, Steve. This PL06 does not work well on your images. But that's what it's doing. So yes, you can then go in.
Why I don't, because when I am doing that in Photoshop, I am creating a new layer with that preset or that action. And I very rarely run something across an entire image. I'm usually masking and kind of controlling one area or making adjustments and tweaks to that preset. So I think, and I know we're going to talk about this, but like that is something that I would love to see Lightroom add is possibly layers.
That was going to be one of mine too. I wrote it down.
Nice.
But then it's like, I don't know if you need, if Lightroom has everything Photoshop does, I don't know if you need both. So I'm not sure if it benefits them to have everything working the same way.
Yeah. I don't know their long-term plans for that. So we'll come back and let's talk a little bit about that. Krystal, how do you feel about presets? Do you have some that you use? And if so, are those ones you've purchased or made yourself?
The ones I use now are ones that I've made myself. Like I started out like hand editing. And so when I find something that I like, I'll save it as a preset so that it just, but I have purchased or I've been given presets before, but I just find that I have to tweak them. So if I'm tweaking them, I might as well just create my own and use my own.
Yep. I agree with that. You know, I help a lot of people one-on-one with Lightroom, and I log in, I see their Lightroom, I'm working with them usually on just kind of organizing files, but I always see so many people with so many different presets purchased from all over the place. And I've sold presets in the past. I've usually kept mine pretty simple, but I just find that so rarely do I use these. It's just their looks that not my style at all. And so I just don't find myself using them. So I'd be curious to know if I made serious money on premium presets, I might be a little bummed that Adobe is now kind of selling or including for free some of their own premium presets. But I will say that maybe they just felt like they needed to update, because these presets down here are pretty basic and somewhat dated to some degree. So you can see my own presets. I just have my Auto Magic import and a very basic preset that's I use. Other than that, I'm editing each picture individually. So yeah, I agree with you all. Okay. I think that's it, other than to say native client now on the M1 Max, and it really does feel significantly faster. Nothing amazing, but noticeably faster. And that really makes me happy, because I was already pretty happy with the performance. Other than, I think it was last show, or maybe it was 2 shows ago, I talked about having a weird export issue where exporting took all night when it really should have taken about maybe 30 minutes for the number of images that it was. So I don't know what that was about, but otherwise I've been very, very happy editing on this machine. Apple, of course, had their big WWDC keynote on Monday, I think it was. And there was rumors and rumors of new MacBooks. And I kind of have to say, as a recent purchaser of this one, I'm glad that those rumors were wrong, because it's just that much longer before I have to feel like, oh, my computer is so outdated already versus these other ones. But I am excited to see what they'll bring when they do release the new chips. And this is the iMac is what needs to get replaced for me next. This is, I'm very happy with this as a travel machine and an editing machine on the go. So, yeah. Photoshop also got an update. Nothing huge, but there are supposed to be new updates to the neural filters, which I haven't really looked at in a while. Tanya, you were mentioning picking up the Topaz denoise and sharpen and gigapixel package. In Photoshop, I know that they have listed as a coming soon neural filter, a better denoise engine. So I'll be really curious to see what that looks like. Let's see if they've made any difference to that change at all. Waitlist.
Look at these. I do sometimes use the neural filters. Not often. This is actually another thing I wouldn't mind them adding to Lightroom, because I do soft proofing for my clients, and since I'm really not editing those, I'm letting them choose from their gallery which ones they're going to pick, and then I retouch and edit those images. It would be nice to do something, though, that is kind of quick and not as thorough as I'm going to do for their actual proofs before I send them their initial gallery. So if that was quick and easy and selecting their faces, I might use that more often if it were in Lightroom when I'm culling.
Gotcha.
But a lot of times, this isn't enough for me, for what I feel like I need to be providing for my portrait clients.
Yeah. So in the wait list, so they've moved this over to a wait list now. We have this noise reduction, advanced noise reduction for your images using neural networks. That's the same idea behind Topaz. And it's also the same idea behind their super enhance, which is doubling that resolution. Face cleanup, photo to sketch, sketch to portrait. Some of the stuff is a little goofy. Face to caricature, which with Tanya, you as you kind of delve into that little bit of the illustrative category, is that what it's called? Illustrative?
Well, I'm working my artist case.
Sorry, your artist case. That a little bit more of that style. So apparently in the future, it might be just a single click of a button. But we have no.
Enter these then.
Well, that's the thing. We have no idea when we're going to see these come to actual Lightroom, but underneath the all filters is where we have some of them, and the depth blur is new and the colorize is new. We talked about this last show, I think, and this is where they had, I thought, a terrible example of blurring the background. It was a beautiful scenic location with a person sitting, and they blurred the background. You wouldn't want to do that in that location. You want that background to show. So, all right, let's switch. Let's come back to us, and I just lost us. We touched on it a little bit. One of the things that I asked you both to kind of think about is, yes, we got new Photoshop, we got new Lightroom. What do you want to see next? Tanya, you've said layers. Krystal, you said that's on your list as well. Tell me a little bit about why you'd like to see layers in Lightroom. Krystal, what would that do for you?
Just for like detailed, like fine tuning things, like Tanya said, she masks, or like she works on one section of an image. So I would like that in Lightroom. So because I hate, because I don't do too much photoshopping. I do like just basic stuff, but if I could just have just that little more control, that'd be great.
Yeah. I agree. With the masking tools in Lightroom, I think they're very powerful. They're very nice, but sometimes getting back into where you've done that and those little pinpoints for the graduated filter, the brush, they can be hard to find, or they can be sitting on top of each other. Right. And if you had a quick little layers panel that kept that separate, that would be nice. Does that sound right, Tanya? Anything to add to layers in Lightroom?
Yeah. The other thing that I think would be handy about that is sometimes when I'm doing group shots, I am pulling, like maybe I have a 2-year-old that looked away, everybody else looks great in that image. If I could send that image to a folder to work on with the layers of faces that I already want, that could save me some time as well. Instead of like sending all of those, opening up maybe like 3 images in Photoshop and then copying, pasting pieces. It would just be nice to be able to open up one file and already have all the heads there. That sounds creepy. But so there's some different things that I could use that for. But then that would be more than just asking for layers. That would be also allowing me to layer images in the catalog. So rather than just preset layers.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to see that. I think that would be a lovely feature. Some people watching this who are using Capture One could say, hey, come on over to Capture One. We've got layers, because they do allow you to do masking, and every single layers can have basically all of the panel edits can be different on each layer. So, and then of course you can change the opacity of the layer and really kind of adjust how strong those changes are for that layer as well. So it's in Lightroom like programs like Capture One, but it's not in Lightroom itself.
Right. Yeah, I've tried Capture One, and it just, I guess I'm just so used to Lightroom that I just came back to it. So I need all that in Lightroom.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Krystal, what else would you like to see in Lightroom? Do you have anything else on the list?
Just really performance things for me, not really anything I'd like to add. Just well, I wish the spot removal or like the healing brushes in Photoshop were as I don't know, as easy to use in Lightroom. It just seems like Lightroom is like, it's not as accurate, and like you can't really, I don't know. It's just something about those that
you're just pulling from a different area.
Yeah.
Very strange they haven't updated that actually.
Yeah,
Krystal, you're being way too nice. They suck. The healing, that's the number one on my list now in Lightroom. Is the healing tool is just terrible. And even it makes a bad guess about where to pull from, as you Tanya, you just said it's only pulling from somewhere else. Yeah, and it always guesses the wrong location. And even after I correct it and put it someplace what I think is good, someplace useful for it to say, hey, this is what I should try to match up, it still is awful. Awful. Unless it's a very small spot, these days, I end up going to Photoshop.
Right.
If I have to clone, I don't even pretend to try that in Lightroom. Like, it's just
right.
It's like all you do is click undo and then take it into Photoshop anyway. So save for what we do here when we're talking like quick critiques, it's fantastic because but then we always have to like add the asterisks, like, but make sure you do that better before you print. So
yeah. Tanya, do you have anything else on your list? I know you're not you primarily work in Photoshop. So if you want to shout out new Photoshop tools that you would like to see, feel free to do that as well.
Oh, well, I didn't think about that. I don't know. I always feel like when you asked me, I actually had to look up a couple of things to make sure that Lightroom couldn't do it, and I just didn't know. Because that is a real possibility for me, because I don't use Lightroom for more than my very basic edits and choosing what images I'm going to either show a client or work on for myself. And then I do all my heavy lifting in Photoshop. But I know just from watching like you and other people in Pen edit on Lightroom that I could be doing a lot more with it. That's just been my workflow for so long that it's kind of how I keep things. So. So there are probably a lot of things in both Lightroom and Photoshop that I just need to know that I can do it.
Yeah, I would say we just been kind of bashing for Lightroom a bit. I am generally pretty happy. I think performance improvements have been slowly actually appearing and feeling like it's a fairly responsive program most of the time. And I really like when I can stay completely within Lightroom for an image. Because if I decide down the road, and this happens fairly often, that I don't like how I edited it. I'm not sure, that I made the best choices. Backing up and starting from scratch, or even just backing up a couple of steps and re-editing is very, very easy within Lightroom. It gives you all of those tools. That history panel is always there. Whereas if I've gone into Photoshop, usually it is a start from nearly scratch again. because those changes are much more baked into it, and that's the issue
Well,
there.
if that's the case, then you're doing destructive editing, because you should be working in adjustment layers so that you never have that problem. And if you are working in adjustment layers, you actually have an advantage over Lightroom in the fact that can you go back to a certain adjustment, or do you have to go back all those steps, correct?
You do have to go back steps that you've made till then. That's a great point, and that's part of, yes.
Yeah, if you're working in adjustment layers and you make like a color adjustment layer and then you make a contrast adjustment layer, at any point, as long as you still have those layers saved, you can go into properties and change that adjustment. So Photoshop does actually have that over Lightroom to some extent, but you have to save that Photoshop file to go back to it. As soon as you compress all of those layers, then you lose that ability.
That's a good point. Yeah. So what am I doing wrong in Photoshop then? I think it's just feeling like I've baked too many changes in, and then I should be using these adjustment layers more. Maybe I'm talking more about cloning and healing on a bigger level, but nah. We need more Photoshop tutorials from you, Tanya. That's the answer.
I would love to do that.
Yeah. I think we've come to the end of the show. I checked the Q&A. I think the couple of questions that we answered. Roger actually has got a good question. Any new gossip as regards to the rumored Canon R7? And a quick answer is no. I haven't heard anything new. All of the recent information has been focused around the R3 that we should hear more and more about as we get closer to its release date. The R7 is the rumored APS-C Canon RF model, but we don't have any hard information yet, and who knows? So that's it. All right. Hey, Krystal, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I really appreciate it. Folks who are watching the show, if you don't already, you should follow Krystal. She is a fantastic photographer based in the Atlanta, Georgia area with beautiful children who are regularly her subjects. And as I said at the beginning of the show, if you missed this, she has a great video out on starting to decide between the Canon RF50 and the Sigma 50, a 1.2 lens versus a 1.4 lens, a Canon native lens versus a third-party lens that needs an adapter. You might think it's a clear choice, but go watch her video.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Always a pleasure. And also on the East Coast, just a little further north up in the Pennsylvania region, is Tanya, fantastic portrait artist and artist. How do you describe yourself, Tanya, when you are talking about making the artist case for PPA? How do you describe that?
I don't know. Crazy.
Easy. All right. From that Instagram link I have on the screen, you can find all of her work. Some of it is fantastic and some of it is a little crazy, but still fantastic. So go check that out. And if you're still watching the show at this point, please take a moment and give it a quick thumbs up. That's a really nice way to thank all of us for our time. I'm off to a workshop this weekend, but I will be back Tuesday night, which means there'll be a show Wednesday. I'm not sure who will be joined me. Probably not as sunshiny yellow, whoever's sitting on either side. I might have to start writing contracts. You can't look brighter and more beautiful than the host. I have very thin skin. I can't handle it. So no, thank you both. And chat room, thank you so much for hanging out with us. You really do make this show so much better with your questions and your comments and your thoughts as we go through the whole show. So thank you all. And we'll see